Alright, what's going on everyone? We have a new batch of Pioneer Challenger decks. Just a heads up, the release of these is a little bit weird as it has been delayed in some places but not others. So just a heads up, they have a weird release date because of delays. But the idea with this video is we're going to go over all 4 decks. We're going to take a brief look at them, just go over the core strategies so you can decide which deck is best for you. So let's start with the Izzet Phoenix deck. This is a blue-red spell slinging deck. It has Arclight Phoenix, Thing in the Ice, and Crackling Drakes as payoffs for casting spells. The Phoenix is a 3/4 with haste and flying that returns to the battlefield from the graveyard when you cast 3 spells in a turn. Thing in the Ice is a 0/4, but after you cast 4 spells, it flips into Awoken Horror, a 7/8 that will bounce all non-horror creatures to their owner's hand. And Crackling Drake has power equal to the number of instants and sorcerers you have, not only in your graveyard but also in exile, so it doesn't matter if your graveyard gets exiled, it'll stay big. So here's how this works. It plays a lot of spells that require you to discard cards, like Lightning Axe, Chart a Course, and Pieces of the Puzzle. The first can blow up a creature, and you can do it for 1 mana if you discard a card, preferably Arclight Phoenix. Chart a Course lets you draw 2, then discard a card if you play it before you attack, which is what you want to do, so you can discard Phoenix. And then Pieces of the Puzzle looks at the top 5. You can grab a couple cards, but what you really want to do is see a Phoenix in those cards and put it in the graveyard. So while you're casting these spells, Thing in the Ice is sitting on the battlefield, losing ice counters, and ideally in a single turn, you will cast 3 spells, flip the Thing in the Ice, which is going to bounce your opponent's board, and then you get like a couple Phoenixes back, right? This can allow you to swing for 13 damage, assuming the Thing in the Ice was already on the battlefield the turn before. And yeah, you can just push tons of damage through all of a sudden with no blockers on the battlefield. And that's the entire premise of the deck. The entire deck is just drawing, discarding, lots of stuff like this. Lots of ways to draw, discard, filter, churn through your deck with the goal of flipping Thing in the Ice, reanimating Phoenix, and making a giant Crackling Drake. So if the idea of slinging spells to awaken Krakens and reignite Phoenixes sounds fun to you, then this might be your deck. Next on our list is Orzhov Humans, a very aggressively tuned tribal humans deck. Has a ton of 1-drops like Bloodsoaked Champion, Dauntless Bodyguard, Thraben Inspector. The first 2 have 2 power for 1 mana. The champion can reanimate itself, and the bodyguard can protect a creature by sacrificing itself to give it indestructible. The Thraben Inspector is also a solid 1-drop. It's a 1/2 for 1, and it gives you a clue token so you can draw in the late game if you flood out. And the important part here is all of these have very solid bodies for just 1 mana, and then we have ways to pump them. We have Luminarch Aspirant, Thalia's Lieutenant, Rally the Ranks. The first is going to put out a +1/+1 counter every single turn, so that could just snowball if it's left unchecked. If the opponent doesn't have removal, it just gets more and more powerful, and it can distribute its counters wherever. The Lieutenant, when it enters, is going to put a +1/+1 counter on every human we control, and then it's going to get a counter every time we play a human in the future. And then Rally is an anthem. We pick a creature type, gonna be humans of course, and give them all +1/+1. And this deck also has ways to just mess with the opponent a little bit. We're an aggro deck, but we have Giant Killer, Kite Sail Freebooter, Thalia. The first has an adventure to blow up big creatures. The Freebooter can yoink a card out of the opponent's hand. Thalia makes removal and board sweepers more expensive, which is very important. We need to stall. We're trying to kill our opponent as fast as possible, but board sweepers are devastating, so making them cost 1 more is very relevant. First Strike also makes this very good at attacking, because we don't have to worry about it dying in combat as much. And yeah, there's some removal and stuff too, of course, but the general idea is flood the board with cheap, aggressive humans, turn them sideways, end the game as quickly as possible. Next on our list is Dimir Control, a blue-black deck that looks to control the game. It's true, the deck is filled with control spells, Fatal Push, Heartless Act, Extinction Event. All of these are good at blowing up creatures. The First is an early game removal spell. Heartless Act can kill anything so long as it doesn't have counters. And Extinction Event is a board sweeper that allows you to pick odds or evens and then spare things that have an odd or even mana value so you can save your own threats. That's useful. If you prefer to counter things, it has Negate, Mystical Dispute, Sinister Sabotage, stuff like this. The first is a hard counter for non-creatures. The second can counter anything as long as the opponent doesn't have 3 extra mana, so great at countering stuff that the opponent taps out for. And Sinister Sabotage can counter anything, and it also surveils, which allows you to filter through your deck. And, speaking of filtering, control decks like to filter, so you get Consider, Narset, Dig Through Time. The first basically surveils, then draws. Narset can dig 4 cards deep for non-creatures, and Dig Through Time can delve your graveyard away to look at the top 7 and pick 2 of them to put into your hand. So lots of ways to filter through your deck, and all of this is what you expect from a control deck, right? We have removal, we have counter spells, and we have filtering, but how do we win? And for that we have Torrential Gearhulk and Shark Typhoon. The first is a 5/6 that will let us recast a spell from our graveyard for free when we cast it, and note that it has flash, so we can flash it in and recast a counterspell at instant speed. It can also be flashed in as a surprise blocker and also recast a removal spell to deal with 2 creatures at once, so that's pretty good. And then Shark Typhoon is an enchantment that will spit out a flying shark token every time we cast an instant or sorcery, and the power and toughness of the shark will be equal to the mana value of the spell. So if we cast a 3 mana counterspell, we get a 3/3 flying shark. We cast a 2 mana removal spell, we get a 2/2 flying shark, so on and so forth. And that's it. Kill stuff, counter stuff, draw cards, and eventually win with a giant Gearhulk or an army of flying sharks. That sounds fun to you? Check out Dimir Control. And finally we have Gruul Stompy, a green-red deck that is trying to ramp into big scary monsters. So for ramp we have Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystique. These are basically the same card. They're 1 mana 1/1s that can tap for mana, meaning we can have 3 mana on turn 2 and up to 5 mana on turn 3 if we draw 2 of these. And we're trying to use this mana to cast things like Questing Beast and Glorybringer. The first is a 4 mana 4/4 with Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste, and it also does all kinds of other stuff like being difficult to block and dealing damage to planeswalkers when it hits a player. But the important thing here is that it's fast with haste, and it gets to stay back on defense with Vigilance to make it difficult for the opponent to keep up with our damage output. Glorybringer also has haste in addition to being a flyer, and when it attacks, we can exert it to deal 4 damage to a creature. So basically, we can deal 4 damage per turn to the opponent, or if we exert it, it doesn't untap the following turn, but it deals 8 damage, we just deal 4 to the opponent, 4 to a creature. So the same damage output, we can just divide it and hit specific creatures if necessary. It's good value if it's a long, grindy game to constantly kill creatures with it, and value is actually an important aspect of this deck. In fact, in the meta, this is usually referred to as Gruul mid-range because it has a pretty hefty focus on generating card advantage. It also plays things like Bone Crusher Giant, Lovestruck Beast, and Chandra, and all of these are really good at, helping with card advantage. The first 2 are creatures with adventures, so they help generate value by having 2 effects. The Giant can shock something, and then it's a 3 mana 4/3. The Lovestruck Beast can make a 1/1 for 1, and then it's a 5/5 for 3. And then Chandra does what planeswalkers do. She gets extra cards, blows up creatures. Lots of planeswalkers do that, and it's all value, right? And note that while these are very card advantage focused, they're also stompy creatures, right? Bone Crusher and Lovestruck Beast, at the end of the day, it's a 3 mana 4/3 and a 3 mana 5/5. And you combine that with Questing Beast, which is a 4 mana 4/4 with haste, and you can see how this deck can both be aggressive, be stompy, be powerful, but also generate card advantage. So we're using elves to ramp into big creatures. We have a lot of power on the battlefield, but our powerful creatures are also very good at 2 for 1ing with adventures and damage effects, basically. So yeah, if you want to go big and you want to go fast and you want to hit hard, but also have some long game grindy value built into your deck, Gruul Stompy might be the deck for you. And those are our 4 decks for Pioneer in 2022. If you're interested, I will have sponsored Amazon affiliate links in the description below. As always, I strongly discourage you from actually using those because you should support a local game store, but I'll also leave links to the complete deck list if you're interested in those. And also note that I have played these, I have gameplay videos with all of these, so if you're interested in those, I'll also leave links to those as well. There's lots of links down below, apparently. Lots of links. So check that out, check the description for those resources, and we'll also be doing upgrade guides in the future, but yeah, let me know in the comments which deck you're most interested in, and in the meantime, thanks for watching, I hope this was useful, and I will see you in the next one.